ArtSpark Texas presents a community conversation with Ruth McIntosh.
My name is Susan Slattery. I'm the Director of Outreach with ArtSpark Texas, and I want to welcome everyone today, especially our June Artist of the Month, who is Ruth McIntosh. And Ruth just has all kinds of things happening besides being an artist and a dancer and a veteran and just a very talented and interesting person overall. So with me are my cat, who's over here walking on the computer keys, Director of Education, Jerry Slayton, sorry, who wrote a blog and interviewed Ruth this month. And Jerry's going to do a much more exciting intro than I have. And we also have our artworks and veterans art, April Sullivan, our director for that as well. So thanks for joining us, everybody. And I'm going to mute myself because my voice sounds terrible.
Yeah, well, thank you, Susan. And we've got a couple people coming in. It looks like Terry's coming in the room. I appreciate everyone joining us. I really do. I think this is going to be fun and kind of an expansion on a conversation Ruth and I had a little over a month ago, where we dug through a lot of her work, which was super expansive because Ruth is incredibly prolific and a maker of multimedia. I think in that conversation we had over a month ago, we went through paper making, painting, embroidery, all of some of the miniature work that we'll be focusing on tonight. We talked a little bit about writing. I think Ruth might have given me an insight into a couple of poems, and also told me a little bit about her dance kind of performance background as well, which is so much fun. Obviously, as creatives, we're always looking for other people that do similar things to us to make us feel not so isolated and alone out there. And so it's nice that Ruth has continued to push herself and really expanded her vocabulary of art for so many years. She's, as Susan said, a retired Air Force nurse as well. And so I know that works into her story and her process. But I just want to be quiet and turn it over to Ruth and allow her to kind of guide us through and maybe narrate a little bit of her work and her process, which is super, super detailed and multifaceted, and I know very time consuming. So maybe Ruth, you can shed some light on how to first of all work in miniature, but also how you find so much time to work.
Oh, thank you. Well, it takes time. I just take a few hours here and a few hours there, and projects can take a year sometimes. So that's where I find the time. And I started doing miniature things as a kid. I just loved tiny things. But then about 2012, I got introduced to a miniatures club. And that's when I got introduced to the 1/12 scale, where 1 inch is equal to 12 inches in real life. So everything I'm going to show today is in the 1/12 scale. And what's on the screen right now, our club was doing a dome scene where we had this little wall, and on the inside was a room, on the outside was a garden. And this was my first idea. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. So I had a bookcase and a chair and a rug. And I was actually playing at the Ecumenical Center when I took this picture. But these pictures are not in the order I selected them. So we'll have to just roll with it. As I was designing this dome, I thought about a 3-corner shelf, and I found this shelf on eBay. And as I studied it, I realized it was wood beads stacked on a wire with little wooden shelves. So I was like, I can do that. Oh, this 3-corner wire shelf gave me the idea. This was one of my early concepts: a rocking chair and a spinning wheel and a 3-corner shelf. And that triggered my memory of my grandfather holding me for the first time. Oh, here's the wood I found on eBay. I asked the woodsman to cut it in fourths so I could have my shelves. And there's my shelf with the wood beads and the scalloped little cloud shape cut in fourths. So anyway, when I put the spinning wheel and the rocking chair and the three-corner shelf, I realized I was recreating elements from my grandparents' home. And this was again early concept with a shorter shelf and an antique porcelain doll that I did not end up using. There's the antique doll. I found her on eBay. But these are early steps. Then I worked on the garden. And I wanted to highlight in the garden, most of the flowers are store-bought things that I adapted. But the hibiscus right here, these I found silicone molds on eBay, little tiny molds that were for making nail art decorations. And I used Play-Doh, and I don't know how I did those stamens, but I did. They're very tiny. We're talking, those flowers are barely 1/4 of an inch across. And let's see here. This is another view of the garden. My grandfather raised roses, so I had to put some roses in the garden. And also there's a bird on the bird bath. Now the bird bath is something I made where I took the stem out of an air freshener, and I had a plastic flower, rigid plastic flower, and I mixed sand in gray paint, painted it that way, and it looks like concrete. Oh, here's a close-up of a butterfly I made with the same nail art type molds. And I thought I had, this is just close-ups of flowers that some of them are just fragments from artificial flower clusters. It's very hard to find things small enough. Here's another close-up of, there's a butterfly I did. One of my butterflies, that's Play-Doh. And there's a cat. The cat I bought was not a very pretty cat, so that's why it's got its back to us. But in this picture, you can see the texture on the bird bath. Now this is the coffee grinder that I built, I made for the shelf. And I'm hoping, yes, here are the elements that I used to make the coffee grinder. A block of wood, two little squares of wood, a bead cap, an earring back, and a head pin for doing jewelry. And then these little flat back gold buttons, which are very tiny. They're 1.5 millimeter, so they're very tiny. So that's how I made and the handle really turns. So here is the finished scene from one angle. And my grandfather had on that three-corner shelf, he had his Bible and his green coffee cup. And I had to hunt and hunt to find a coffee cup that was the right size. Here's another angle. And also he had on the television, he had one of those ships. And I had found in a miniature store one of those ships. And let's see here, there is the picture that inspired this whole scene. And you can see the spinning wheel in the front of the picture. And there's the outdoors again. I made the hurricane lamp. I took a Christmas ornament ball for the bottom, and then an old-fashioned injection vial where you snapped off the top. Used that for the chimney. There's the coffee grinder again. Now this is a clearer picture of the miniaturization I did of the photograph of my grandfather holding me for the first time that is on the wall in this scene. And then the couple in the picture is my parents. There for perspective is a soda can. Gives you an idea of just how small everything is. Now this moves on to an office dome I did to commemorate my father's life and work. And this, I started out with the same template of a arch and a window. And as you can see, it doesn't work with that desk. Oh, these are scrambled. There's the grandfather. There's my dad. And this is the Native Americans from Mexico that my father worked with. And they were the Huichol people in the mountains of Mexico. And this was the earliest contacts that my father had with them. So as I worked on his office dome, I found miniatures store-bought that gave me a telephone, a tape spool, a stapler, and an Underwood typewriter. But I made the little box of index cards. And I photocopied dividers for index cards and then photocopied them down and down and down until they were tiny enough. And my secret, I didn't photocopy all 26 index cards. I photocopied them by section, and it created the illusion when I put little slips of paper in between those sections, created the illusion of all 26 divisions. Here is an early concept for the office, just laying things out to see how I wanted them to look. And I didn't end up using everything in the scene. The globe of the world is a real sterling silver charm with a turquoise globe, and I decided I didn't want to glue that down in my scene, so I got something different. But I wanted to highlight that the nameplate on the desk is nothing more than my name cut from a credit card. I photocopied down actual letters from my dad's life and career, and I was really pleased at how clear they came out. And his hobby was studying Japanese, so I found on Google searches, I found the covers of the books that he had in his library on the kanji and the hiragana, katakana language books for the Japanese language. And then I just covered little blocks of wood to look like books. Then I wanted to do his briefcase. So I found this inspiration on eBay and I wasn't going to buy it. I made my own. Now his briefcase, from his favorite briefcase, had the national bird of Guatemala on it, embossed in the leather. This is my suggestion of it. Oh, there should be more. There will be more of the briefcase, but they're not in the order I put them in. Here's a close-up again of miniature letters. This, I miniaturized a certificate of his. I don't know if I should confess what I made the frame out of. That beautiful half round molding is actually a tiny, tiny dowel from a firecracker that split the wood in half when it blew off. And I found it in the street, sanded it, cleaned it up, got all the soot off of it, stained it, and made my frame. This again was a concept moment where I was just laying things out to see how they would work. Here's a close-up of the lamp and the nameplate. My sister said, you need a flag, you need an American flag in there. So I photocopied down an American flag and made a little tiny thing, as you can see by the penny. Here's the garden, and I'm hoping another picture will show that I glued one of the pigeons to the leaves of one of the plants so that it appears to be flying down to the ground. Here's a close-up of some of the letters. Some of them I had to approximate. In other words, I had the stamps from the era, but maybe not the actual letter, but I went through old things and got the actual addresses. Then I made, my parents received an award for 60 years as missionaries, and I made a miniature suggestion of it. You can see the penny here. There was a charm I found that was to go in a floating locket. So that gave me the globe of the world. And the 60, I took a Ferrero Rocher candy wrapper, smoothed it out, and rubbed it over a 6 and a 0 on an old ID card. And it took a lot of hunting to find a 6 and a 0 together. This is in the finished scene. My father began the translation of the New Testament for the Huichol people, and this is the cover of the actual Huichol New Testament. You can't really read that. It's Kakayari Nikuyeya Shaparari or something similar to that. I never learned Huichol. But what amazed me was when I was making the scene and going through old family items, I found a postage stamp right here that commemorated the actual Huichol people. It's a Mexican postage stamp commemorating the Huichol people. And I just was so thrilled to find that to put in my scene. And of course, here is my parents on the desk. Now, this photograph on the desk that looks like a Polaroid photo is actually just when I took a screenshot on my phone in my gallery. The tiny photos across the bottom of the screenshot, I cut them apart. And that's how I got the Polaroid look. This is just another view of the finished scene. There you have the Japanese books and the flag. Oh, there's a better view of the little award and the books. And of course, a passport. I found a non-silver charm to use for my globe of the world. And I think this should be the last picture. There is the finished briefcase in place. And oh, I made pencils and a letter opener. The scissors and the stapler were store-bought. There's my index file again. And some of those little tiny pictures from the bottom of the screenshot are in the open drawer. And let's see, there's the outside again. Here's the flying bird. And the finished. I might add that all I had was doves for this scene, but I wanted pigeons. And I found a crazy nail polish that was this strange oil slick mix of purple and green. And it was perfect for turning doves into pigeons. This is a whole nother scene called a garden bistro scene. And what's exciting to me about this scene was I made the hummingbird. And there's going to be some better close-ups of the hummingbird. But I made many things in this scene. And it's, oh dear, they're scrambled. I apologize. There's I don't know why it's doing this to me. I apologize. This is a antique store that I did. I was planning to have it at a different point, but there are paintings on the wall in the antique store that are miniaturizations of my actual art. Here's the scene I was trying to talk about, the bistro scene. And I wanted to say that the beautiful glass case is actually 5 square picture frames from Dollar Tree that I glued together. And then I found some beautiful feet that I put together on a platform to make the base for my case. Here's my garden bistro scene. I made the apples. I did not make the fish pond, I bought it. I made the apples and I made a lot of the the cheese tray. This picture is a little too blurry to show that I made the celery sticks. Well, these are not in order. I apologize. I selected them in order, but they're not posting in order. As for the antique shop, I would like to highlight that I found there used to be a German company that made pierced porcelain. I don't know if you can see that bowl there. That is a real porcelain bowl. And what looks like blue cobalt blown glass is real cobalt blown glass. There are artisans that make miniatures that are incredibly small. There, this shows a piece of my artwork that I miniaturized for the scene. But I was hoping to show more of the garden bistro. This is just more of the antique store. These are miniatures of family photos. There's the grandfather scene. It's a little tiny, but there's my two sisters and myself and my nursing school graduation photo. One of my doctors said, you need a picture of yourself in every scene. And I thought that was an interesting concept. So these are just close-ups of the details. Now I made the jewelry for the bus in this scene. And that was a real challenge. There's more of the artwork. There's the finished antique shop. There's, for perspective, my friend taking a photograph of the antique shop, and you can see her hand and phone compared to the size of the little scene. Now here is a quilt shop. This was my first miniature. And in this quilt shop, we made dozens of bolts of fabric. This was a miniature club project. And I embroidered what looks like quilts. I did the embroidery for that. And over here, I think I have another picture that comes in closer on the one that says, so happy, that I embroidered those to look like quilts. And we made the little hoop, the quilting hoop. And this fits inside of a basketball trophy case. And let's see, what I wanted to highlight, and it will come up here, is that the bolts of fabric have labels on them. There's a close-up of my embroidery. Oh, the scissors. I think I have one more picture of the scissors. Those are really hooks from Hook and Eye closures that they just buried the loop of the hook in foam core and they look like scissor handles. But we did make all the spools of thread. We were crazy. There we go. There is the bolts of fabric with the label on every bolt. And there's my embroidery. I did design this one. It's a little hard to see, but there are scissors with silver thread in between the needle and thread squares. Now this project, I have to show real quick. Here you have the liners, the red ends are liners from prescription bottles, and the pedestal is a fat straw. That's all. And then I took silver beads, molded beads, and put them around that to make with the paint, gray paint with sand in it, to make it look like a bird bath. And then I used E6000 for the water. So there's the finished bird bath. Couple scenes of the bird bath, which I gave to one of the pharmacy technicians. There's the finished scene with a drink bottle. You can see this perspective. Okay, these pictures got kind of scrambled, but here's the perspective on the garden bistro scene where the cat decided to inspect my work. And this is a very close up of the hummingbird I made, which I made with Play-Doh, shed parakeet feathers, and wire. And I struggled and struggled on how to make the hummingbird at the feeding station not fall off and not break off. And finally I got the inspiration after about 4 hours to take the wire and coil it inside the feeder and stick it out the side of the feeder and build the bird onto the wire. They're my beautiful apples. They're Fimo. This is the garden bistro scene. I made this candle back in the 70s. It was very popular to have a drip candle where you burned different colors of candles and collected the drips on the like an old wine bottle. So this was I used birthday candles to make one. Here's a clearer picture of what I wanted to show was those carrot sticks. I took a Q-tip, a plastic Q-tip, cut the ends off, and shoved orange Play-Doh in the barrel of the Q-tip, let it dry, it shrank, slid out, I broke it, and I had carrot sticks. And the olives are green beads with a touch of red paint. And the nuts back here, those are actually hackberry seeds that I found in the yard. And I don't know if you can see the nutcracker there. It is actually the back end of a safety pin. I just cut the loop end off of a safety pin with wire cutters. So there's the scene from an aerial view. And apparently that is all the pictures that I was able to select. I was limited to 99. There are more I could add if I took a moment.
I think that gives us a really good starting point to start thinking about it. I know one of the questions that I was thinking about, Ruth, is like, are you using tweezers to place these things? Is there a certain type of glue that you prefer? I'm interested in some of like the tricks of your trade, just because
Okay.
I've tried to make miniatures before, and so I can start to understand this, but nowhere
What
near
do you
on your
do?
level.
Well, tweezers sometimes are essential for handling some of those tiny things. Then there's a secret from the egg art world where I took beeswax off of an old beeswax candle, and I may even have one right handy. I shaped it. Let's see here. I shaped the beeswax to the end of a toothpick in a pointed shape, and the beeswax is slightly tacky. You sometimes have to, rub it with your fingers to warm it back up. But the tiniest of items, you simply take this and touch it to the item, and it picks up the item. Then you touch it to the glue, and the glue takes it off your pick. So the very tiniest things, the 1.5 millimeter things and things like that, it's the easiest thing in the world to just touch, 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 touch. So yes, that's one of the secrets. And then as for glues, good old tacky glue is a very common one. That I'm also enjoying now a clear Gorilla Glue. It's very flexible as it dries, but it dries strong. So it's a little messy because it's strings. The other glue is if I'm trying to make water, I use E6000 and I glue a layer of E6000. Then I take a blue highlighter and smear it over the top of the dried E6000. Wipe it clean so it's just a hint of blue, and then I put another layer of E6000. When that's dry, I coat that with clear nail polish and it creates the mirror-like sheen of water.
So that was maybe the bird bath that we saw?
Right. And the thing about that is E6000 stays slightly tacky and would attract dust. But by sealing it with the clear nail polish, then it prevents it turning dull.
Makes
And
good,
there was
yeah.
one other question you had. I'm trying to remember what it
Oh,
was.
I'm just thinking about like needle nose pliers seem like they're almost a must for some of this bending and stuff that you're doing.
Right. And strong cutters. You have to have really strong cutters, like to cut that safety pin takes a very strong cutter. And then in miniatures, there's a cutter that cuts through wood. So when we have wood dowels, thin wood dowels, we have a special cutter that's like a plier shape that just slices through thin dowels neatly, and it has markings on it that allow us to bevel the cuts. So when I made that picture frame, you notice the corners were beveled. It was easy as pie with that little cutter.
Yeah,
Now
that
we
makes a lot of sense.
sometimes we use a miter box if we have to cut bigger pieces of wood.
I have a question, Ruth. This is April. That,
Hi.
that was really amazing. I've never seen, I mean, I've seen a lot of your art, but I've never seen the miniatures, I don't think. So that was really cool. So like the safety pin that you cut to make the nutcracker, like how much do you adhere to the exact dimensions of the ratio? I mean, like if
Pretty
the safety pin was a little bit too much, you would have to pick something else.
Well, safety pins come in different sizes.
Oh. So you do stick to the exact ratio?
Pretty much.
Wow.
We measure, all of us in the miniatures club, we have measuring tapes in our purses.
So
You know,
like every time you're walking around looking at everything in the world, are you like saying, what could that be in a miniature world?
Just about.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I was, I had an infusion this afternoon, and there was a little cap that they popped off of something, and I stuck it in my purse. I'm going to try and figure out how to use it.
You're amazingly resourceful.
Yeah.
I really enjoy finding new uses for things like found objects. So I'm very taken with your resourcefulness.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was kind of fun. I don't know how I got the idea with those prescription bottle lids to turn them into a bird bath, but it ended up being a project for our miniatures club. We made 85 of those.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow. That was amazing.
It was nuts. I don't think they were too fond of me afterward because it ended up being more complicated to teach than I thought. But the same with the 3-corner shelf. They wanted to do that for a major project. And I put together kits for 85 shelves.
Wow.
And I didn't think when I planned that there were 63 beads in each shelf.
Wow.
So I counted out. I don't know how many thousand beads that is.
But when you're doing it, I bet it's just really fun. Is it like relaxing?
Usually it's relaxing. Sometimes I get frustrated, but
Yeah.
but it's so rewarding when you finish, when you succeed. So I had some more pictures that it would only allow me to select 99. So I had some more pictures I wanted to
feel like
show.
we looked at 99 pictures. It went so fast.
Yeah, I feel like it's the narrative, and this is where Ruth and I went in our conversation. The narrative drives the pictures, right?
Yeah.
And so we're just interested in the story, and luckily you've documented it so well. You provide all the evidence, and so it really just allows us for a really good virtual tour. It works pretty well in the virtual world, I think.
And I just have a handful left that didn't get selected, and I don't know what order they're going to come up as. Let's see here. This is the peacocks. One day a friend sent me photographs, which I don't have here, of peacocks that sold for $700, and they were atrocious. And I looked at them and I thought, I can do better. And then I had a scrap of clay left that was too small for anything. And I ended up making this white peacock that's smaller than a dime. But here were my finished creations of peacocks made with Play-Doh, wire, twigs, and feathers. And I worked hard at realism, and I studied real peacocks and did the brown feathers along the side before doing the tail feathers, which I thought were peacock blue, and they're really green. And here's my white peacock in 3D. You can see how I did the tail quite realistically. And I used parakeet feathers. Here are the books I was telling Jerry about that I just made today. I found I had the tiniest buckles that I didn't even remember I had. And I'm making a one-room schoolhouse. Well, this thing scrambled them. I'm making a one-room schoolhouse now, and I wanted these little books to go in the schoolhouse. And I had a printable of book covers that I printed off and made the little books before putting them together. Here's some more of the books I made. I was telling Jerry how I found a McGuffey reader on Amazon, and I did a screen print of the cover of it and then miniaturized it. And I have to brag on myself, I used gold nail polish to give the Bible gilt edges to the imaginary pages. And there are my books, and that's my last picture.
It must be a combination of kind of everything that's going on. It's problem solving and like the challenge of those things, but also like you're digging through family history, personal history, right? Does the schoolhouse offer any of that? Is this like an experience that I don't know that I've only walked through one room schoolhouses, like, you know, maybe in parts of Tennessee, or I'm from Alabama, but my grandmother would tell me, like, you know, the stories of her school experiences. Is this something like that for you?
Well, I have a niece that's a school teacher, and I just thought it would be fun to give her a one-room schoolhouse. I'd just been wanting to do one. I found miniature desks of the antique style, and that just did it for me. I had to make it. So I'm at a point where I still need to finish the walls, and then I can begin gluing things in. So today I made the blackboard. I found sticker paper at Dollar Tree that was chalk paper. So I'm going to make the blackboard out of that. I haven't established what I'm going to use for chalk because a white pencil did not work. So I'll work on that problem. As far as, you know, writing on there, I found a cord, a cord for children's jewelry making. That's a round, very thin plastic, I guess. I don't know. It's flexible, but I can cut it in short sections and it will appear to be chalk.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I could see that. I like when you were talking about the first kind of major dome of you as an infant, that maybe at some point you started putting those things together and then you realized that was what you were doing. So the
Yes,
impetus maybe in the beginning wasn't that, it was just,
it
talk to
was
me
just
about that.
nebulous. Yeah, everybody was doing a scene and I didn't know what I was going to make. And I looked at what miniatures I had on hand, and I had a chair and a bookcase. And then I realized I had a rocking chair, and I had the little wire 3-corner shelf. And I'm trying to remember if I had the spinning wheel or I just, between the rocking chair and the 3-corner shelf, it triggered the memory of the spinning wheel from my grandparents' home. And then I was off and running with researching and putting together details from their home and racking my brain. And it was so rewarding when I got to show that dome to one of my cousins, and he went virtually back to our grandparents' home. He was like, "Oh yes, this, oh yes, that," and well, why didn't you put this, and why did you know? He's like, "You forgot the portrait of Queen Victoria." But it was so cute and so rewarding that he recognized all those elements from their home.
What do you feel like? I don't know. I'm always curious as to what the art does for us too, right? Like, we have to have that reason to make it. Does kind of going through those memories, I mean, it has to do something for you as well, right?
Well, it's very meaningful for me. It's I don't know, I feel an emotional heartwarming and excitement for the ones that, I mean, I enjoyed the antique shop, I enjoyed the little garden bistro scene, but these that tie into real memories have a whole different level of impact on meaning for me. And I'm the only one in our miniatures club that's done that. Everyone else has still just done generic scenes with a lot of detail and a lot of realism, but not going to an actual memory. And so that's kind of interesting to me that nobody else has tried to recreate an actual memory like I did. And as for what it does for me, I happen to have a lot of chronic pain. And when I am working on these projects and my creative juices are just flowing like crazy, I get a mental break from that pain. I am able to forget the pain and just be in a whole nother world and zone. And so there's a lot of things that don't get done in my world, but the art gets done because of the break it's giving me.
That's great. Yeah, that's
I
great.
think there's a motto there. It's a lot of things that don't get done in our world, but the art gets done. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. That was I thought that was such a great recap. And miniatures are not all, folks, because Ruth is making other things as well.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I know we had talked about potentially sharing an exercise or an activity or doing something quickly together. What do we think of? What do we end up coming up?
Well, I thought if people would think of a scene that was meaningful to them and how they might recreate it. We talked about sketching it, but as you can see, my sketches were three-dimensional. You know, I laid out little elements and changed my mind a lot and didn't go with everything I started out with. And so I was thinking, well, maybe you don't want to do a miniature, but just to think about things you have or might want to recreate, a playroom, a living room, a garden.
Yeah, I think that could be a fun activity, or maybe even just people verbally going into a room in their memory and kind of talking that through.
Yes, and also I got low battery here. Just 1 second.
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay. Um, I have been inspired a lot with Play-Doh because you can make tiny things with it. So for me, it's easy. Like those peacocks, they just sort of happened. And I mean, I just started squeezing the clay and I made the tail and then I made the head and there I had a peacock. And, maybe that's just some of the gift that I have been blessed with, that I wanted a peacock and next thing I knew I had a peacock, you know. But with the Play-Doh, you can take, say, I didn't have the right brown for a dog I wanted to do. I took I took red and green, and just like mixing any other color, I kneaded together a little bit of red and a little bit of green, and I got brown. And it was kind of too dark, so I kneaded in some white, and I got just the right color.
I don't think I've ever mixed my Play-Doh colors. I should have
Well,
tried
it
that.
turns out if you set them next to each other, they will bleed together. And then the other funny thing is they started selling Play-Doh with glitter in it. And I found out you don't have to buy Play-Doh with glitter in it. You can just knead some glitter into your Play-Doh and you've got glittery Play-Doh. But again, size is important. You don't want to make anything any bigger than this that with your Play-Doh because it just cracks as it dries.
You had told me, just taking us back through kind of our conversation that we had, Play-Doh also like holds another significance because I feel like it was one of the first art activities maybe you had done at the VA involved Play-Doh, and you had made this totem of
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, we were supposed
that
to
was
make
a
a
good story.
oh, yeah, I wish I posted a picture of the totem pole. We're supposed to make a totem pole, and we started out with tin cans, and I was muddling along, and it just wasn't working. So I went smaller, and it wasn't working, and I went smaller, and it wasn't working, and I ended up with Play-Doh, and I made my favorite pets, and each head was about this big, and I did I did a miniature parakeet on top, and then I did a black chow mix was my dog, Sugar, and then I had a cocker spaniel named Spice, and then I had a Russian blue cat named Everything Nice. So I had Sugar and Spice and Everything Nice, and then the parakeet on top, and the whole totem pole was that big. And it worked. You know, when I got small enough, it quit cracking, and as they dried, they were fine. And I had from my egg art, I had micro beads, glass beads that were only 1 millimeter across, and that was perfect for the eyes and noses.
So you have to have some type of system, some elaborate system of organization at your house because yeah, I'm just thinking either it
It's
looks
just
like my house and it's disorganized, but you know where everything is, or
that
okay.
that's it. I have a spatial memory. Now those buckles that I just showed you on those books, I had forgotten I had them. I was looking for something else, and I opened a little drawer, and there were those buckles, and I went, oh, I've had those for 20 years, and now they're exactly what I need. So I'm so glad nobody came along to clean out my house in those 20 years. I mean, those buckles didn't take up much space anyway. But my sister, she teases me and said, or caringly says, my house is a cross between a museum and a toy store.
Sounds like a really fun place to live.
Except now it's totally disorganized and in disarray because with the chronic pain, I haven't been able to keep house like I wanted to. So I don't normally let anybody in, but before I got this disorganized, it was pretty much a cross between a toy store and a museum.
For this last 10 minutes, maybe if anybody else has any other questions or maybe has a potential room memory that they want to share. I don't know. I know we kind of glossed over the activity, but I think in looking at Ruth's work, it made me start thinking about maybe how good my spatial memory is, but also those particular objects. The hurricane lamp you mentioned, my grandmother had kerosene lamps that were really very similar, and that's such a unique shape that I hadn't thought about in a really long time.
And hello there to Ron and Karen and Deborah Hughes. Those are family and friends. I'm so honored that they joined us. I could see if I could find that totem pole real quick. I have it in a folder of,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Any other images? I like that you showed us something that you're currently working on. I thought that was fun. If you haven't had a chance to read Ruth's blog, I don't know how well written it is because I wrote it, but the images are really fun, and it takes you all the way back 50 years or so to one of Ruth's first miniatures, which she had photos of, which is incredible. I thought that was so great that you've hung on to those, and what a treasure.
oh, thank you. Well, yeah, some of the things from 50 years ago I still have. Um, let's see, where is the totem pole? It's in this file. It's in this file. I just have to go far enough back. And as I was scrolling, I found something else I wanted to show real quick. So, oh, here. Where? Well, now I'm puzzled. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Found it. Okay. Let's see what shows up first. Well, we were talking about found objects. This here, see that orange piece? That is the mouthpiece off of an asthma inhaler. And I saw a basket. So I covered it with a moldable fabric and made the handle, and I saw a basket. Then I saw something at Michael's, and I said, I can do that. And I made a snow globe with a snowman. Well, it's hard to see in that picture, but the snowman is 2 styrofoam balls with a few dots of ink and a fluffy ribbon. But these are tiny, tiny eggs I made. They're not real eggs, they're plastic eggs. There's the totem pole. Let's see if this is a better, there's a side view of the animals. I thought I guess I only did 2 pictures of it. But you can see the brown, 2 shades of brown on the dog and the green eyes for the cat. Oh, I forgot the rabbit at the bottom. There was a rabbit. And what's fun is the parakeet. I used actual feathers from the parakeet I was commemorating. Because the parakeets, they shed feathers all the time. And there's a yellow and black and yellow striped feather on the head of the parakeet. And that's a single feather from the head of a real parakeet.
Now, help me remember the context of this. This was a VA class that you were taking
Yes.
that I think was a bit of a bridge kind of back into art making, maybe, or am I off
Well,
on that?
yes, it was an art expression group where the teacher exposed us to different art forms every week. So different types of art, fine art. So we did encaustics with wax. We did sand paintings. We did collage and acrylics and watercolor, and almost everything I made in that class ended up winning awards in the VA art festivals. Even this won a first place as a sculpture. Oh, and the rose on the front of the little base is another nail art mold creation. The leaves and the rose were from, it's Play-Doh molded into a nail art silicone mold.
That totem is amazing and so sweet.
Oh,
Their little
thank you.
faces are so sweet.
Well, those pets were very precious to me. They've all passed on now, so
Well, you can tell they each have a very distinct personality.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And again, like the peacocks, I just wanted I wanted those animals, and they just happened. And I had never sculpted something before.
Very cool.
It helps to be a spatial thinker, I think. You take naturally to sculpture, that only makes sense to me.
Oh, thank you. Well, and
I
maybe
oh,
that
go ahead.
element of just believing you can.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And Ruth has done other really fun things through kind of your paper making activities, and I know that's almost another page of your life entirely, but you've given stuff back to your community. I think it's such a good way, and it sounds like you have a really strong miniatures community that you're tapped into. Part of what we're trying to do here at ArtSpark is definitely expose people to artists that make work that's maybe different from ours in our community, but also kind of open up people's eyes to potential opportunities for community. And so I think that's great that you found your people, especially in
Oh,
that
thank
miniature
you.
space. Uh, and
Well, there was
that
a
can be such a
window. Oh, thank you. There was a window of time that I taught rubber stamp art on how to make handmade greeting cards. And I had a lady come to my class. I taught classes for about 7 years. And she came to my class and she said, I am the least creative in my family. I'm the laughing stock of my family. No one has any respect for me because I can't do anything creative. And by the end of my class, she had so many ideas. She told me the next time we met that she laid down to go to sleep that night and couldn't fall asleep because her head was swirling with ideas. And I had broken the barrier. And she was so excited because she was now a creative person. And I thought that was probably the most rewarding moment of teaching.
that's such a great story.
Wow. Those are the moments that as artists and teachers that you hope for. Um, so I think that's a really good way to end our community conversation with you, Ruth. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
just amazing artwork. And thank you again so much. Thanks everybody for joining us. And until next time.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Good night,
Bye.
Thank you,
everybody.
Ruth. Bye, Ruth.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you to our ArtSpark Texas funders: Texas Commission on the Arts, St. David's Foundation, Cultural Arts City of Austin Economic Development, National Endowment for the Arts, Creative Forces, Austin Public Library, Donald D. Hamill Foundation.